Dear Father, thanks. Thanks. Dear Father, we thank you for bringing us all here together today. As we start going through the first step, the awareness step, Lord, I pray that you would help me to just be able to communicate well what I learned this week and what I went through. I pray, Lord, you would help me communicate clearly, and I pray that you'll be here amongst us and that everything we learn and that seek to do would just honor you and bring you glory. So in Jesus' name I pray, amen. So this week we are going to talk about awareness, and some of us are better at being aware than others. And so I thought it would be good to try and get an idea of how aware you are. And we're going to do an awareness self-test. All right? So it's going to show there on the screen. So you guys may have trouble, so you may want to come in the middle. This only lasts a couple minutes at the most. So maybe I'll kill the lights here in the middle. That will make it easier to see. This is where you wish you had like a really big screen. Okay, now the deal here is, all right, there's a group of people with two basketballs. One team is in white, one team is in black. And what you're going to be doing is counting the number of passes that the white team makes. Okay? Good? Mm-hmm. All right.
To yourself, not out loud.
To yourself.
Oh, duh.
Oh, was it started? Oh, okay. No.
Keep it to yourself, please. All right. How many?
13.
13.
Anyone 12? 14? 12?
I got
12?
12, but I thought
12? All right, the correct answer is 13. 13. That's good. But something else funny happened during the video.
Yeah, bear.
How many of you guys saw the dancing bear?
Oh my gosh.
Who saw the dancing bear in the middle of the video? Two of you. Two of you. Here, check this out in slow-mo.
Yeah, it came from the left. Yes, and-
He's gonna come in from this side. Oh, come on.
Oh, I thought it was from the left.
He's gonna moonwalk across the middle. Yeah, here we go. There he is. And now he's gonna moonwalk off. There he goes.
see, that's the reason that I thought it was somebody in left.
Isn't that funny?
That is
All right.
So you saw it, yeah.
Yeah, I had seen this before. I saw it then too. I was like, what? What is it?
I just thought it was bad.
See, guys, I don't know about you, but for me, what happened was the first time I watched it, I was kind of doing preparation, so I saw self-test, blah, 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 this is good. So I'm kind of sort of watching, I'm kind of sort of paying attention. I'm competitive enough that I don't like to get it wrong. So I'm thinking that's the point, you know? And so, seriously, when they said, who saw the dancing bear? I went, no way! I mean, for real? And then I see this bear, like, seriously, right in the middle. I think it's because you're watching, you're really paying attention to the white team, and the bear is dark, like the black team, you know? And so he just mixes in as one of the other ones, so you don't even see him go. And I actually think it's a really good illustration of how awareness works out sometimes. We get really concerned and focused on one thing, and we completely miss the other stuff that's happening right in front of our face. So much so that we don't even know it's there. So for us to talk about today, we're actually going to be talking more about, I guess what you would say is self-awareness, more than just general awareness. But for us to talk about self-awareness, I think we need to start out by saying exactly what it is, okay? And you have this assignment in your books, and so I have the benefit of I've been able to think about this a lot. But I would define it this way. I would say self-awareness is a consciousness, or I could say a conscious awareness of one's place in the world before God and in relation to the rest of creation. So again, I would say it's a consciousness of one's place in the world before God and in relation to the rest of creation. And then it's important to note that it's not just about seeing around yourself. Because a lot of times I think that's what we do. We're aware of things around us. What's really, really important is it is seeing yourself within the context of creation. Within the context of the creation we actually live in daily. And this conscious awareness allows you to question your own motives, your own purposes, and to see the value of others. If you don't see yourself in the context of creation, it's much, much more difficult to see anything like that. Now, another way to look at it, and this is, for me, it's very helpful. That's what it is. What's the opposite? What is the exact opposite of what we're talking about? So I would say, when we talk about the opposite of self-awareness, it's a kind of self-centeredness. Okay? It's a kind of self-centeredness which focuses largely on circumstances and treats the actions of others only in terms of your own security or your own happiness. Does that make sense? So it's a self-centeredness which focuses largely on circumstances and treats the actions of others only in terms of your own security or happiness. So, in essence, we're talking about how do I relate to God, how do I relate to others, and how do I relate to the rest of the stuff in the world. So, in a sense, a person who is not self-aware might be what we call a bull in a china shop. So concerned with their own desires or with their own sense of what should happen, or what might be right in their mind, that they are willing to run over people in order to make sure it happens. So a lot of times you'll have people that behind them, you have a whole bunch of people that will run over. That's one way. Another way would be a person who's not self-aware might also be a person who is so concerned with their own happiness or self-fulfillment that they don't see how much they use others and take advantage of them, or how much they use relationships only in terms of how the relationship benefits them. Another common person who is not self-aware, someone who has been taught the truth. They can tell you the truth. They maybe could even teach you the truth, but they can't see they're not living that way. You know, we had a little bit of the plank in the eye thing, right? We talked about. It's a little bit of that syndrome going on there. Now, a person who is self-aware, you're able to keep at the front of your mind that they are creations, not the creator, right? So that's the relationship between me and God. I am not the creator. I am a creation, as everyone else is a creation. That they are made as God's image bearers and therefore have God-given dignity and they deserve respect. That God loves humankind, which includes me. Therefore, I must learn to love myself in a way that's God-honoring. Not in a crazy narcissistic way, but in a way that honors God. I gotta learn to love myself. And I need to learn to love others. And when you think of that, in the way that they feel loved, not in the way that makes you feel like, well, they should feel loved. If they don't feel loved, it's their problem, right? A self-aware person understands that they are stewards over creation, that the created order is useful, it can be rewarding, but we have responsibility for caring for it. Things like possessions, our money, our jobs, our careers, these things are gifts from God, but they do not define who we are. Whether we got a ton or we got a little, we still have that same God-given dignity that each human possesses just by the fact that you are God's image bearer. Having a lot doesn't make you any better, it doesn't make you any worse. It just is. A self-aware person desires a deeper and more abiding relationship with God. They are not satisfied with just enough. A self-aware person is able to appreciate the gifts and talents and abilities of others and can really take joy in seeing others do well and exercise their gifts, talents, and abilities. A self-aware person doesn't define themselves by what the world calls success. So example, a self-aware person seeks to understand why they get so angry when someone cuts them off in traffic. What's up with that, right? I used to do that. I hit the steering wheel one time so hard, I got this thing welled up in here that looked like a golf ball. I was on my way to seminary. Right? So what's up with that, right? Why would I get so angry about something like that? That's the most ridiculous thing to, well, almost, I've done other things more ridiculous, but that's one of the most ridiculous ways you can hurt yourself. You're angry at someone in another car, 8 cars up, that wedges themselves in, so you pound the steering wheel to demonstrate to them how angry you are at them. They're 8 cars ahead of you, right? That is just... So what was it in me that caused that to just bubble up like that? There's something wrong going on in there. Self-aware person takes time to ask, why do I feel jealous when one of my friends has succeeded? What is it in me that does that? Why is that? A self-aware person will ask themselves why they feel afraid of not being accepted. You are who you are. You have that God-given dignity and self-worth. Why do I feel so afraid of letting other people see me? So why is this so important? Why is it so important to be self-aware? I would say this: we are to grow in our Christian maturity. We are to become more Christ-like. And in church, we learn a lot about what I would call aspirational values. You know, things we aspire to at some point in our life. Christian values. If we don't have a good and healthy sense of where we're at right now, how are we ever going to get where we want to go, right? It's like having a map with a destination, but you don't know where you're at. I've done that too. I was out in the wilderness, in the desert, in Mexico. Thought I was going to die because I knew where I wanted to go, but I didn't know on the map where I was. Bad deal to be out of water. Thankfully, someone else saved me. But, so how do we become more self-aware? Being self-aware, it's based on an examined life, leading an examined life, okay? We become aware of these important things in our life because we examine our motives, our desires, our purposes, how we see God, how we see others, how we see ourselves. I think the 2 biggest reasons why we don't lead examined lives is because, 1, we don't see the value, or no one's ever told us it's important. That's a big one. I mean, I actually can't remember a single time, like I told you guys, I grew up in church from in utero, right? I don't ever remember a single sermon saying, this is important. Tons of sermons about learn the truth and apply the truth. And a lot of things about you have to apply things in your life, but very little about, I've had friends all my life that last about a year and then it blows up. Why is that? Why do I keep blowing up my friendships? Why do people, I can tell, people think I'm a bull in the china, no, not me, but if you think, I'm a bull in the china shop. Is that okay? Is it okay that I run people over? I mean, I'm a good leader in the sense that my organization gets stuff done, but is it okay that I run people over all the time? I'm jealous. I've always been jealous. Is that okay or is that not? I mean, those are the things we've not really talked a lot about this in church. So I think that's one. It's because we don't see the value and necessity of it. And two, and the book actually talks quite a bit about this, is our lives are filled with busyness and distractions. So I hope I've already demonstrated to you why this is really, truly important. So let me talk a few minutes about busyness and distraction. Now, a few weeks ago, I talked to you about American cultural patterns, right? And I told you how spooky it was and how this book really made me feel weird because they described me so well when I thought I was unique, right? Now, the problem with this idea of leading an examined life, being self-aware, is the actual cultural patterns we live in are very problematic with that goal. The culture we live in, that's not how it works. So let me just repeat just a few of the ones that kind of talk to this one place. As a culture, American culture, we are individualistic and intensely self-centered. Okay, now this is a secular study, okay? They club intensely self-centered. In our culture, a busy life is valuable and is to be admired. We are pragmatic and functional. Things must be understandable, they must work, and they must have a purpose. We love formulas. We put a heavy emphasis on efficiency, which means not only must stuff work right, but it must work quick and it must work very efficiently. We are oriented towards action and decision making, and contemplation is only valuable if it leads to new goals and immediate action. So the idea of taking time and spending evaluating your motives and your purposes and your values as a culture, we don't emphasize that. We don't value that. It's not even a value. It's not even that we don't teach it. We don't value it. And I think this is a real problem. These cultural patterns are huge stumbling blocks to being self-aware. Self-awareness takes time. It takes discussion with trusted friends. It values time spent in contemplation of your motives, your purposes, and your emotions. It values real lifelong transformational change and not quick situational behavior modification that works only for the moment. It's not fast and it's not efficient. In fact, it usually is quite messy and it's very inefficient, especially when it involves other people. The idea of self-awareness that leads to Christian maturity and Christ-likeness It's a lifelong process, and it will be painful at times. When I examine the materials available, some going back hundreds of years, there is a general agreement that busyness and distraction are killers of spirituality. And I'll just give you guys a few quotes. When the enemy cannot destroy you, his job is to distract you. I wanted to figure out why I was so busy, but I couldn't find the time to do it. The greatest enemy of good thinking is busyness. Your busyness made me realize what loneliness really is. Sometimes it's best to speak from ignorance. That way you can see the wood without being distracted by the trees. A little bit of sarcasm there, right? Sometimes it's best to speak from ignorance. That way you can see the wood without being distracted by the trees. This is a little longer one. One of the greatest attacks of the enemy is to make you busy, to make you hurried, to make you noisy, to make you distracted, to fill the people of God and the church of God with so much noise and activity there is no room for prayer. There is no room for being alone with God. There is no room for silence. There is no room for meditation. And just the last one of pages I could have given you is, busyness is not of the devil. Busyness is the devil. So, I get it. I need to become more self-aware. So, how do I do it? Okay? I believe the key is to be intentional and diligent about spending time without distraction and to contemplate the Christian life versus how your life seems to be, especially in terms of motives, purposes, and values. And just being super honest about a chunk of this, the idea that you can do this solo is almost impossible. It's next to impossible. Let me read you a quote right out of our workbook. Human beings are poor self-examiners, subject to superstition, bias, prejudice, and a profound tendency to see what they want rather than what is really there. In a nutshell, self-deception is overpowering and a deeply, deeply profound human weakness. And so I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm saying this is part of the human condition. We deceive ourselves. We cut ourselves breaks. We tell ourselves that stuff isn't so bad. We have a tendency to see things through the lens of, if someone else were in my same exact shoes, they would do the same thing. So I'm justified in what I do. I am maybe one of the best justifiers. I'm really good at it. So if you need help there, understanding, I can help you. Now this, you guys, this is why Christian community is so important. Being honest with another human being is incredibly powerful. The book of James says to confess your sins one to another. And, you know, if you're stuck thinking you don't really sin like the way James is maybe talking about, like it's not really a big sin, think about confessing your weaknesses one to another. Talking to a trusted conversation partner. That's what my one seminary prof calls it, a trusted conversation partner. Somebody you can share deep things with. So as we seek self-awareness, sometimes it will be, again, from the workbook, the still, quiet voice of the Holy Spirit gently nudging you as you realize something that wasn't even on your radar screen before. You realize, oh my gosh, I do that. Or that's me. You know, sometimes in counseling, it is one of the coolest things when somebody all of a sudden goes, oh my gosh, I just realized why you were talking about this last week. I do this, don't I? This is me. Ah, wow, I had no idea. And they just, it's like, opens up, you know, your head pops up above the clouds. And as soon as you can see it, then it's not hard to see again. It's really hard the first time to see some stuff. Really hard to see. It's like a fish seeing the water they swim in, or us seeing the air we walk around in. It's hard to do. So sometimes it is that still, quiet voice. Sometimes it can even happen almost alone, like it did with Elijah. Now God talked to him, which is a pretty good deal, but sometimes it can't happen in your quiet time. You can't come to places where you become aware based on other things, something else pops into place and you go, oh, this is sweet. Other times, you know, it would be like a confrontation, like it would be this thing, right, that we talked about. I'd be like, hey, Kim, let me help you get the thing on your eye. And I go, well, now, I whap her upside the head with my board when I'm trying to get the sawdust out of her eye, right? And so some nice person in the church needs to go, Jim, dude, you got a big board sticking out of your eye. Kim has a little speck of sawdust. What the heck is going on, man? Why do you feel like you've got to get her speck of sawdust out when you got this big stinking board? It's so big you're hurting other people. It's not just Kim. You're whacking other people upside the head with it. What's going on? What's wrong? Sometimes it'll take that. Now, the nicer that can come through, I would say you do it with the least amount of upside the head as possible, okay? Other times, there's stuff that goes on, and I would say a really big example of this would be the David narrative, where he was out on his roof as kings would do, and he looks down on a rooftop, he sees a very beautiful woman, and in those days, the way it works with kings is you say, you go get her and bring her to me, and that's what happens. There's no, oh no, I don't want to. No, that's not how it goes. So she comes, they sleep together, she gets pregnant. This is a problem because her husband is away at war. She's pregnant, that's a bad deal. So he invites the husband back. Sleep with your wife. He's like, no, when my buddies are on the battlefield, I'm not gonna take comfort in my wife. I'm gonna sleep out against the wall until I go back to fight. So he doesn't sleep with her, so that's a bad deal. No way to hide this up, right? So he sends a note back with him, put this guy up at the front, make sure he dies. So, in a nutshell, David kills the guy's wife after sleeping with her and getting her pregnant. Bad deal for the king of God's people, the man that's talked about as being after God's own heart. Bad deal. Now, no one questions the king. If you go into the king and request an audience with him, he doesn't like what you say. Even in Israel, they could whack you. No one questions the king about stuff like this. Prophet Nathan goes in, tells him a little story. David goes, this man deserves death. Nathan goes, dude, it's you. You're the person I'm talking about. So sometimes it takes a pretty big confrontation to help people see their stuff. It takes a special person to do that. It takes special circumstances to do that. It takes special relationships to do that. Not anyone can just walk into David and done that. It would take a special person, Nathan, prophet of God, going in to talk to the king. Now in our life, that kind of helps you guys see we need trusted conversation partners. We can call them friends, you call them whatever you want, but you need people in your life that are close enough that they're able to say, especially the last one, right? Dude, you got a board sticking out of your face. What's going on with you? hopefully you'll have somebody that could do the latter. We just talked with the last thing we just talked about, the Nathan thing, but a big confrontation like that takes deep relationship. Now, for the purpose of our study, Freeway, we're running groups with them. We're seeking to build this community. We're seeking to foster this self-awareness. Quite a few of you guys are in groups already. If you're not in a group, I will tell you it's not too late. I thought about this, and I feel kind of bad because it feels like I'm using guilt here, right? This is kind of a rough week to say I'm too busy, right? But I do understand there are periods of life when stuff is not possible. I get that. But if there's any way for you guys to in a group, please do. They're going to go for another 6 weeks. Secondly, you guys, if there is people in your life that you think could benefit from this study, please invite them. It's not a forever commitment. This is a study that goes a particular length of time, and it's done. It's pretty, as far as inviting someone to church, this is pretty low key, pretty low risk. They don't have to go to group, but if they go to group too, that would be awesome. But hopefully it could be something where we can invite them and introduce them to the life and people of the church. Now, anyone, I would like to hear, anyone have any comments about their group? Any stuff from group that you guys thought was kind of cool? I mean, I'll start. I had one thing from group that was pretty interesting. And it was a comment I heard from another group, and it was just a comment, but it was really, really good, because this is that self-awareness thing I'm talking about, where I don't think about being retired because I'm not, right? I don't know what it feels like. I've never been retired. So a person said, I think this whole busyness stuff is a bunch of hooey. Really? Well, yeah, because when I was working, yeah, I might have been busy, but now that I'm retired, I'm really not busy at all. I mean, I don't feel a lot of times useful. I feel like I could do a lot more. So that brought up a really good point, because I think a lot of times we do convert the idea of busyness to just having tons of stuff to do, which I think that is busyness, but we forget about the distractedness, we forget about the part of just having noisy lives. So I think no matter where you're at, whether you're, stay-at-home, I mean, Jody was just a stay-at-home mom. She was bored out of her mind for parts of the day, right? But she felt like the purpose she had was a very good purpose, and she was willing to sacrifice that amount of time. But she was bored, and she was scared about what was coming next because she didn't know. And then people that have retired, I've heard a lot of things about feeling not useful, feeling not relevant, feeling lost, feeling like I don't know what's coming. The point about being self-aware during this time is that you understand those feelings, right? That, wow, when I left my job, I was a pretty important person. People called me a lot. And now, people don't call me and tell me how the meetings are anymore. They don't call me and tell me how things are going. I don't really talk to them anymore. So I feel like, man, that's rough, because it makes me feel a bit like I was only useful because of what I could do for them. They really didn't care for me. I'm not important anymore as a friend. Becoming aware that that's an issue, that's a good thing. That's a good thing that you're aware of that. So I think the self-awareness thing is different depending on what time of life you're in. But it's all about being reflective. And again, looking at your motives, your purposes, your values, your emotions, and being honest about what they are. Anyone else have anything interesting that maybe you're not free to share them, but if it's something, yeah.
The self-centered part of me has a hard time understanding the prodigal son.
The prodigal son?
Yeah, the prodigal that you talked about last Sunday.
Yeah.
Why would the father take this son back who squandered all the money. And,
Yeah,
what is this about? This is crazy. This is a crazy story.
yeah,
But the self-aware person might begin to understand what it's really about God taking all of his children back who want
Yeah.
to be taken back, whether they've been good or bad. I think Bible study probably helps, along with other things, in becoming more worldly aware, but particularly that prodigal son parable, I think, may illustrate a lot of what you're talking about.
It's really interesting though, because that prodigal son story, and this is just truth, I don't know if this is true for you guys, but in my life, I've heard that story time after time after time, and I don't ever remember a single time where it goes past the father takes the son back, and that's the end of the story. And that's not even the point. That's not the point of the parable, right? The point of the parable is the elder brother's left outside basically the salvation party, right? Because he's moralistic, self-righteous, this isn't right. But you know what the honest truth is? That story kind of doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel fair. It really doesn't. And that, again, that's good to talk about. That's a good thing to talk about. That's a good thing to be aware of. I don't like this. This isn't fair. I would also be one of the guys where if you hired me at 9 in the morning and I worked all stinking day in your orchard, then you hired someone at 3 and they worked till I quit, I'd be kind of upset if you paid us all the same wage. I really would. That's just the honest truth. But it's good to talk about. Why is that? I think there's definitely some American cultural values there, but still, I still think that's a tough thing. But when you think, when you spin the story around and talk about that in terms of a relationship, you come to the Father late in life, early in life, after doing crazy things, horrible things, or actually after leading a really good life, you're both his children, right? You're both in a relationship with him. And that's the thing. And I do believe we do get rewarded for doing well, and I think there's consequences for doing bad. So it's not like people that have done terrible things in life don't have consequences. It's not like they get off scot-free. So that's not actually the point, right?
Well, the self-centered side of me is the older son who, in that story, who says, "What? He's taking him back." They're celebrating. What am I? I'm not even going in there.
Right. So any last comments? So yeah, Kim?
Oh, I was gonna brag about our group. It's fun because we have, I think everybody in the group attends church here, but my friend Sue, that I've known for forever, 20 years or whatever, she came and she was here once before. She came to my brother's memorial, and I had several friends that don't attend here, which was really flattering that they came and they just know his story and mine. And then she brought her folks a few weeks after that to kind of see if it was a good fit. And they're older, and just with their church history, it wasn't a good fit that way. But everyone's so nice, that it was so comfortable, and so they had a good feel that way. But they're looking for more of the traditional structure. But so when I called her, or texted her and invited her, I was sure she'd say no, and then I already had my response. Well, that's okay, no worries. And when she said, "I'm in," that's what she said, "I'm in." And I was like, seriously? Her husband had a stroke in April. He's 48 and has quite a bit of residual, brain damage, and she's trying to get him back to work and with the school district if possible. And anyway, so she's got a lot. And so I already had her out for her. You've got a lot going on with Dave, and school just started. She's a speech therapist, and I said, "I'm really surprised with this, and this." And she goes, "I know that list. I play that list in my head every day. I'm there because I need to," what'd she say? She said, "I need to refuel my soul." And so I was really flattered that she came. It was nice because she had made some connection with the gals before, just from coming those couple of times. And she was looking for an opening somewhere, and she didn't expect it to be that. So I was just really pleased. People obviously made her feel very welcome, but her list is really long, and I was already ready to say, no worries. And then she said, I'm in. I'm like, that just took a lot of courage, and she had to just say, I'm exhausted. Everyone came that night, they were so honest. Deb too, she threw down some dinner, like, and raced here. Everybody did, but they still got here. So I just took that. It was as a leader, I was so flattered that they would do that, and I know what an inconvenience, and it wasn't pleasant, but I think God's gonna use that time if you're there and ready. He'll use that, and I can already sense some camaraderie just in that first week. So, yeah, so it'll be fun to get started in lesson, and, yeah, so it was really blessed me in time.
Nice, thanks for sharing. Because Jody and I are gonna be gone next week. We're going to her dad's in Florida. We're going to Hurricane Alley there, and his house didn't suffer any damage, so that's good. But we're gonna be gone next week. So we're still not positive what we're doing in service next week. So that maybe you guys suspend a week, or you can keep going if you want, and we'll just have the sermons catch up to your groups. But you could take the week to go back if anybody new comes to your group, or you could just have a week off, whatever you want to do. Because I think we're definitely either going to do something along the lines of some testimonies or something along the lines of Dennis has actually prepared some stuff for us. So we'll see exactly what's going to happen. We'll let you guys know via probably the little link we'll send out with a copy of the stuff, okay? All right, so let me pray. Father, thanks so much for this, for this study, Lord, and just for what we can learn from it. This idea of becoming self-aware, that learning how we enter into relationships with others, and the value of others, the value of these ourselves. Are we right with God? Are we right with each other? Lord, please help us as we try to evaluate our a lot of times it's motives, Lord, why we do the things we do, why we feel the way we feel. Lord, please help us to put that on our radar screen, to think about that, and give us enough courage to be able to talk about that with our good friends, our good trusted conversation partners. Lord, lift up this week. Just be with everyone. Help us to live in ways that honor you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.